And by next week, we'll do a rundown of, what they discuss and all that. It's probably not going to be anything big or new, but either way, news is news in football media. We're going to start the show off with, I would say, embarrassing, but it happens a couple weeks for the season. It's not just A&M players. It's pretty much a ton of players all over the place, especially in the SEC. I'm not going to mention names. There was a player from Auburn who also got in trouble recently. Texas A&M star running back, who's a senior this year going into probably the biggest year of his career, was arrested on early Sunday morning at the Northgate area in College Station, charged with disorderly conduct. I'm not going to get into the reasons why it had to do with, aggravation with a patron, someone who's, and, I don't want to get into specifics. Either way, Mike Elko came out pretty quickly and basically said, we're going to deal with this internally. I think we know what that means. And for those who don't understand that, when it comes to athletes getting arrested for these type of very minor crimes, and I'm not going to really call it really a crime. I'm going to call it a misdemeanor. It's just something that kids get in trouble. I can say that for myself, my own past, I've gotten in trouble with that kind of stuff. And it's just, you gotta just kind of roll with it. And you got to understand that coaches are going to deal with this in their own way. Sometimes that goes into the area of suspension for a game or two. For A&M, I don't expect him to miss any time, being that this is weeks before. I think we're less than 40 plus days before the opener versus UTSA. Either way, to both of you guys, do you expect Le'Veon Moss to miss any significant time because of this mishap?
I do not. Okay. Do not whatsoever. That I'm going to kind of put a period in that now. He shouldn't miss any time, especially with practices coming up.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I'm glad to be back on here. Thanks, Cameron, for having me on. I agree with that pretty much 100%. Don't want to make any commentaries on my thoughts about that whole, like everything you just said there with kind of how maybe how silly that is. I'm waiting on A&M to be like a real SEC program where their athletes don't get arrested for trivial things like whatever this was. But I'll leave it at that. He's going to be just fine. I'm sure he'll run some gassers, given his knee is fine. And he's going to be good to go.
Yeah. It's, you see this every offseason, and that's the thing. I personally don't like doing coverage about this kind of stuff because I think it's really personal sometimes. And I'll even say it is smart that in today's kind of journalistic world, we always have to get, permission to even write about this kind of stuff and cover it because you have to be very careful. That's why I'm not even going to go into what he did per se. But I will say this, it was a $300 fine. So it's probably not, it's not something you should see from a 360 degree view of, something that's worth suspensions. And I think that it is a good learning moment. He's a young kid. I have to remember that I'm a 31-year-old man. I think we're all kind of older in this realm. And so you kind of look at it, go 10 years back. And I think, well, I was stupid too. We all do dumb stuff because, especially for a college football player who is a star, and I mean star, capital STAR for this program, that's on the rise right now. And I can honestly say, look at any of us who cover A&M, we've been talking about Le'Veon Moss all season, his importance, and I mean his vast importance to A&M being a contender and earning a college football playoff berth, because we saw last season, this was a 7-1 team that after Le'Veon Moss was injured against South Carolina, I mean, they were in shambles. They couldn't, and mainly that had to do with the lack of running back depth and Marcel Reed being thrown into the fire. And we'll actually get to Laura Rutledge, who's an SC Network head coach, host, that had a great quote talking about, Marcel Reed kind of defending him, saying, well, you got to give the kid a break because he just didn't know what he was doing yet. Now he has a full offseason and figure things out. But, I do think that if Moss hypothetically missed time this season, I think they could weather the storm a little more. But he did show a player that was averaging 6+ yards per carry. He is that important. So I think that when this was making the rounds and people are a little worried, and I think that after Elko came out immediately and said, deal with this internally, that's code word for don't worry about this. He's going to get his, and on the practice field, he's going to be very, very tired after a couple of practices, and he's going to learn his lesson. So moving on to that, it is what it is, but we just have